What if you actually found out that no one leaves the hotel you lodged in alive? Dive in with us in this interesting story and find out what happened. Deep in the heart of Nkiri Forest, hidden from the world, stands an exclusive and mysterious lodge where only the wealthiest and most powerful are allowed to stay in. It is said to be a place of luxury, serenity and secrecy, where guests come in but rarely leave. Wealthy traders and merchants who come from different parts of the country goes to Nkiri Lodge to relax after their business, not knowing what's in store for them. But no one knew what was going on in the lodge, nor did anyone care. When Sandra, a struggling journalist, is assigned to investigate the lodge after multiple guests are rumored to go missing in the lodge, she sees it as a perfect opportunity to make a name for herself. Pretending to be a wealthy heiress, she gains access to the lodge, where she is greeted with lavish meals, eerie silence, and unsettling smiles from the staff. The first thing Sandra noticed when she arrived at Nkiri Lodge was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that made the hair on her arms rise. A heavy, unnatural stillness. The lodge was breathtaking, an architectural masterpiece hidden deep within the Nkiri forest, far from civilization. Its dark wooden structures blended seamlessly with the towering trees, and the air smelled of rich earth and something else, something metallic. She had come under the guise of a wealthy heiress, determined to uncover the truth behind the disappearances of multiple high-profile guests. No one ever left the lodge. Their families received letters, vague explanations about extended vacations or new lives elsewhere, but no one ever saw them again. And yet, no one dared to investigate. Sandra was different. She was hungry for a story, willing to risk everything to uncover the truth. That night, during an extravagant dinner, she noticed the other guests, well-dressed, wealthy, uneasy. Their smiles were forced, their laughter hollow. Something wasn't right. Then she noticed the staff. They moved too smoothly, their eyes lingering on the guest for a little too long, watching, waiting. And then the screams began. Sandra bolted from her seat as a man across the table was dragged from his chair, his terrified shrieks echoing through the hall. The other guests remained frozen, their faces drained of color. No one helped, no one moved. The lodge wasn't a retreat, it was a hunting ground, and she was next. Sandra ran, pushing through the grand dining hall's heavy doors and into the dark corridors beyond. She needed to escape, but the walls seemed to shift, the halls stretching into endless maze. It was designed that way, a trap. She heard footsteps behind her, slow, measured, haunting her. Then a voice, smooth and cruel. The hunt begins at dawn, Miss Sandra. Run while you can. She had one night to find a way out, one night to survive. But as she delved deeper into the secret of Nkiri Lodge, she uncovered something far more terrifying than the hunt itself. The ones who came before her never truly left, and neither would she, unless she becomes the hunter herself. Sandra's breath came in short gaps as she pressed her back against the cold wooden wall. The dimly lit corridor stretched ahead, endless and suffocating. The footsteps behind her had stopped, but she knew better than to assume she was safe. Somewhere in this twisted lodge, the hunters were waiting. She needed a way out, fast. Her eyes scanned the hall, desperate for an escape. Then she saw it, a small flickering light at the end of the corridor, a door. She sprinted towards it, pushing past the dull ache in her legs. The door creaked beneath her weight, and a sudden rush of air brushed against her neck. Someone was close. Just as her fingers closed around the doorknob, a hand shot out from the darkness and gripped her waist and gripped her wrist. Sandra screamed, twisting wildly. She kicked out, her knee connecting with something solid. The figure let out a grunt of pain, and in the dim light, she caught a glimpse of her attacker, one of the staff. His face was calm, too calm. His black uniform was spotless, his gloved hands stained with something dark, blood. "Going somewhere, Miss Sandra?" His voice was almost amused. She didn't wait for a response. Instead, she drove her elbow into his ribs and threw all her weight against the door. It burst open, sending her tumbling into a dark, icy room. She landed hard, her hands scraping against the rough stone floor. The door slammed shut behind her, sealing her in complete darkness. And then she smelled it. That metallic scent she had noticed earlier, stronger now, overpowering. Sandra forced herself to breathe, to focus. She reached out blindly, her fingers brushing against something wet and cold. Her stomach twisted as she realized what it was. A body. The room was full of them. Her breath hitched as she crawled backward, her hands shaking. Some of the bodies were fresh, others decayed. Then the dim emergency lights flickered on. Sandra's stomach lurched. The walls were lined with glass cases, and inside them, preserved like trophies, were the heads of the past guests. She clapped a hand over her mouth to keep from screaming. Then she heard the intercom crackle to life. A voice, cold, emotionless, filled the room. "Congratulations, Miss Sandra. You have discovered the truth. Now, let's see if you can survive it." A metallic click echoed through the chamber. The hunt had begun. Sandra's heart pounded as she scrambled to her feet. The air was thick with death, the glassy eyes of preserved victims staring back at her. She had found the truth, and now she had to escape before she became part of it. The walls trembled as a deep mechanical whirring echoed through the room. The cases of preserved heads began sliding back, revealing hidden passages. She didn't know where they led, but she knew staying here meant certain death. She bolted toward the nearest opening, stepping into a narrow, winding tunnel. The walls dripped with moisture, and the faint scent of rods clung to the air. Somewhere behind her, she could hear footsteps, multiple. They were coming. Sandra's mind raced. Who was running this lodge? Who was behind the disappearances, the haunting, the trophies, and why? The tunnel twisted sharply, opening into a candlelight chamber. At its center stood a massive wooden dining table, its surface gleaming with silverware and freshly served meats. Sandra's stomach twisted as she recognized the jewelry on the severed hand resting on one of the plates. It belonged to the woman who had been sitting beside her at dinner. "Dear guest," a voice poured from the shadows. Sandra spun around. A tall woman stepped into the candlelight, dressed in a deep crimson robe. Her face was eerily calm, her eyes sharp with amusement. "The lodge's owner. You weren't supposed to see all this yet." The woman smiled, motioning to the feast. "But since you are here, why not take a seat?" Sandra clenched her fist. "I'd rather die." The woman chuckled. "That can be arranged." The doors on either side of the chamber swung open. Masked figures stepped inside, their movements slow, calculated. Each one held a curved hunting blade, their eyes glinting with anticipation. This was the final stage, the real hunt. Sandra's mind snapped into focus. She scanned the room, searching for a way out. The masked figures began to circle her, tightening their grip on their blades. Then she saw it. A chandelier above held an old rope. With no other choice, she longed for the table, flipping it over to create a barrier. The masked figures hesitated for just a moment, long enough for her to grab a knife and haul it at the rope. The chandelier plummeted, crashing onto the candles and igniting the room in flames. Screams erupted as the fire spread. Sandra wasted no time. She dashed towards the nearest exits, pushing past the burning wreckage. She didn't stop running. Through the tunnels, through the endless halls, the smell of burning flesh and the shrieks of dying hunters filled the air. Finally, she burst through the main doors and ran into the cold night air. The forest stretched before her, dark and endless. Behind her, Nkiri Lodge burned, its secrets reduced to ash. But she wasn't safe yet. As she stumbled through the trees, a final voice echoed in her mind. The hunter never ends, Miss Sandra. Somewhere in the darkness, someone was still watching. Sandra pushed forward, her breath coming in ragged gaps as she ran deeper into the dark forest. Every shadow felt like a predator, every snapped twig a warning. The lodge was burning behind her, but she knew this nightmare wasn't over. The secret society behind Nkiri Lodge was bigger than she had imagined. These weren't just rich murderers playing with their victims. This was an empire built on human sacrifice, a network that stretched far beyond the burning walls she had left behind. She had to expose them. But first, she had to survive. A sharp rustle in the trees made her freeze. The masked hunters, they weren't all dead. Some had escaped in the fire and now they were hunting her. Sandra dove behind a falling log, pressing her body against the damp earth. She listened. Heavy boots crunched over dead leaves. Find her! She knows too much. A voice growled, her heart pounding. She had no weapons, no allies, just the will to live. Then she spotted something, a broken branch, sharp as a dagger. Silently, she gripped it. If they found her, she would not go down without a fight. The footsteps grew louder. A shadow loomed over her hiding spot. Sandra held her breath. Then, a scream. The figure above her jerked violently before collapsing to the ground, an arrow protruding from his neck. Sandra's eyes darted up. Silhouettes moved in the darkness, bows drawn, blades flashing. Villagers, they had seen the flames. They had come. The hunters turned to fight, but they were outnumbered. Spears and arrows rained down, cutting them down one by one. Sandra scrambled to her feet and ran towards the villagers, the lodge, the people. We have to. We saw an elder gripped her shoulder. We saw it all. The lodge burned in the distance, its terrible secret going up in smoke. But Sandra knew this was only the beginning. The villagers led her back, singing songs of triumph. Their torches lightened the night. Word spread fast. Nkiri Lodge was finished. Days later, the village held a great feast in her honor. But even as she smiled and celebrated, Sandra knew the real fight was just beginning. The lodge was only one part of a greater horror. Somewhere out there, the true mastermind of the network still lived, watching, waiting. And Sandra, she would be ready. Thank you for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the story. If so, please like the video, comment what you have learned from the tale, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more enchanting tales just like this one. See you on the next one. Thank you and God bless. Bye.